Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined today by Laura Bradburn. It's half-time. Celtic 0, Ross County 0. Laura, sum up that first half for us.
Pretty poor, really. Just, the thing that we've prided ourselves on, particularly with our performances at Celtic Park so far this season, has been the way in which we have knocked the ball about and always been able to find runners and seem to be on players being able to read each other's wavelengths, and that just doesn't seem to be happening today. There's been a few situations where, players have read each other's runs wrong or made the pass too quickly or not made the pass at the right time. And that's going forward, obviously. And we just seem to not be creating the chances that we have done in previous matches. Ross County have had a couple of good chances, but other than that, haven't really tested us. It's been one of those ones that I think if you were at Celtic Park today, you'd have been kind of struggling to find much to be enthusiastic about.
One of the points you made there about misreading the runs, I think that, Jota has made some runs where it doesn't seem so far that he's on the wavelength of some of his colleagues. You would understand that to be the case, as he has just entered the building as far as Celtic are concerned. In terms of a debut, he's had plenty of the ball, very tricky down the left, isn't scared to have a shot, had a long-range shot just before half-time there. Have you been impressed with his first-half performance, Jota?
Yeah, there was a wee chance early on in the game where he was over in the corner flag, where he kind of dragged the ball almost 360 degrees and tried to put it through the defender's legs, and if it had come off, it had been one of the best tricks I think I've ever seen. And that kind of wee thing is, it's not always totally effective and it's not always what you look for, but football's an entertainment sport at the end of the day, and you do want players that provide that for you, and I think he's going to be one of those players that's going to find a way into Celtic fans' hearts quickly if he can combine that kind of skill and excitement with end product. And to be fair, I think if some of the other players had been a bit more on his wavelength, I'm thinking of Ajeti, I'm thinking of Turnbull, I'm thinking of a couple of others, Rogic as well. I think if they can get themselves into a better way of working together, then I think he's going to be very, very effective. There was at least one chance, I think it was around 18 minutes or so, where he cut in from the left and played the ball across the goal for Ajeti, and I can just imagine, had it been Kyogo peeling off the defender, it would have been a goal, but Ajeti just didn't seem to find the right position. So plenty to be positive about from Jota's case, but I think just needs a little bit more time to bed in, and for his and the ideas of the other players in the midfield specifically to gel a bit more.
Yeah, Kaplan Mark reckons overplaying and a striker who offers very little. So that leads us into that discussion, Laura, of Albion Ajeti. Not so much an enigma, just someone who seems to be completely off the pace. He doesn't stretch the back line as much as we're used to with Kyogo. I know he's a completely different level of player, but when you think about the transfer fees being roughly the same value for money, Ajeti has failed the audition. He had one chance in the first half there where he has opened his body up to take it on the right foot. It was a weak effort. And you often look at these situations and think, if that's fallen to the feet of someone else who unfortunately is injured, i.e. Kyogo, you're looking at a different outcome. My big concern here is he hasn't really contributed a great deal, Laura, but we don't have options on the bench, really, unless we're shuffling the pack.
No, I said that before the game started. Obviously I ended on a positive, sort of saying, I'll predict a 3-0 and a goal for Ajeti. But I did say before that I didn't think he was going to take his chance, and that I'm worried that we don't have striking options on the bench. One of the things that really baffles me the more I watch him is, at a very basic footballing level, one thing that they say to forward players is find the space, run into the space, make yourself available for the passes. He seems to do strange things, like he'll go, instead of going goal side of the person that's marking him, he'll go the other side, and then he can't be found with passes, or he'll take up the same position as somebody who's like 2 or 3 yards away from him, and then you're basically negating both you and that other player's effectiveness in the attack. When you watch Kyogo, when you watch Larsson, when you watch lots of other strikers, Cadet, who was my favourite, which is why I'm wearing this shirt today in honour of him, and Jota, they took up positions that anybody with any amount of common sense could see. You're like, obviously you're going to take up space and make the defenders think about whether they should come to you or whether they should stand off you. He kind of makes that decision for defenders and goes to them. And I really don't understand what he's trying to achieve with the movement that he's making. And that's why he's so ineffective, because he's never available for a pass as far as I can see.
This is an issue with Ajeti. Some people in the comments are saying, well, he's not been given any service. I think I would tend to agree with yourself, Laura, on that one. I don't think he's given them much options. This is the thing when it comes to, Kyogo. We've got to use him as an example because he's our number one striker now. And, he gives you the option of the pass because he's getting into the space. He's stretched in the back line. Ajeti, I'm not wanting this to turn into 15 minutes of criticising him, but obviously we do have Giacomakis coming in, and hopefully within 6 or 7 weeks we'll have Kyogo back. But in the meantime, Ajeti doesn't seem to be at the races, unfortunately. Stevie Boy reckons the only thing missing is 3 or 4 goals. Jota has been brilliant, and it is interesting that you've worn that top, because one of the first players I think of when I look at it is George Cadetti. It's the only one he actually wore in terms of a home jersey for Celtic as well. Interesting wee point I noticed throughout that first half. Now, Joe Hart, we've had loads of good discussions about Joe Hart, you and I, Laura, and how, perceptions, you build a perception of a particular person or player. And, very quickly, Joe Hart, and this came across in the way that he was engaging with Celtic fans through the media conferences, etc., has changed a lot of people's perceptions of him. But one of the things that always stuck in your mind was that incident with the ball boy, wasn't it? Where he's screaming at the ball boy. It quite clearly looks as though Joe Hart has got an understanding with our ball boys to keep up that high tempo style of play. He doesn't want the ball to be out the park any longer than is necessary. He certainly doesn't want to be chasing it himself. Ball goes out, it goes right to the ball boy, and the ball's back in play. I mean, it's tiny, tiny margins, but it's all part of Angie's philosophy of the free-flowing football that he's instilling in this side, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that myself, that they were throwing it back very quickly, and I wondered if it was just something they were doing off the cuff, but they seemed to be doing it so readily that, like you say, it was almost a message from Joe Hart himself. It actually brought me in mind of, I don't know if you remember, but Tottenham last year had a particular goal, or maybe it was the season before when Mourinho was manager, that was scored off the back of a quick throw-in that the ball boy had delivered to the player to take the quick throw-in, and the ball boy concerned ended up getting invited by Mourinho to have lunch with the players and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where making the environment, Celtic Park as a whole, and everything that you can, make it to your advantage. And if that means continuing to press on the players and making a difference where you don't let them rest when the ball goes out of play, then that's what you do. I mean, it was the same not just with Joe Hart, but with the corner kicks. We seem to be taking them very quickly. And it goes back to that Ange being mic'd up on the training pitch. His attitude is obviously, we keep going until the halftime whistle and until the final whistle. And it should prove very effective. I hope to see the benefits of it of the second half in this game, because I would hope our fitness levels outstrip Ross County. It's obviously not been as effective so far. But, that's one of those things that maybe if you hit 60 or 70 minutes, they really do tire out and you can exploit the spaces at that point.
Now, great points coming in, Laura. Stevie Gal, you're watching on YouTube. Too many misplaced passes in midfield. Yeah, I thought that myself, actually. Turnbull and Rogic shouldn't be playing in the same team, one or the other, not both. This was a criticism I had last season when we were playing Christie, Turnbull and Rogic in the same side. And if anybody told me that anyone could do that successfully, then I would have disagreed with them. But I think up until now, Ange has found a way to to play these players all in the same team. And obviously, Laura's signal has gone kaput, but she will be trying to log back in. But in the meantime, I will speak to you guys and girls in the comments section. And now Daniel Cummins comes in. Fans have used every excuse for Ajeti. He's not what we need. Sometimes it gets to the point, Daniel, where it's quite clear that no matter who you're playing under, what style of football you're playing, who you're playing alongside, it might just not work out for you at a particular football club. It certainly looks that way for Ajeti at this moment in time. I'm always loathed to focus on one player for criticism. Because it's not been a particularly bad performance by the team in the first half. But he certainly is a weak link. And then my biggest concern, as I've said before, is we don't really have a natural striker that we can throw on in replace of Ajeti. I mean, what would we do at this moment in time? You would probably be looking to switch Abada or Jota up front. If you do that, who are you going to play down the right-hand side? I don't think there's any obvious selections there. Jota, who's playing pretty well down the left-hand side, could, I guess, be replaced by Montgomery. But, you know, we're then playing one of Abada or Jota out of their best position. Turnbull, of course, could go in and play in Roderick's position, and he could be replaced by, Roderick could be replaced by Soro or McCarthy. So very, very thin on options, unfortunately, on the bench. It's something that, we used to look at that bench under the tutelage of Brendan Rodgers, and it was a very strong bench that we had. It doesn't seem as though we've got a very strong bench at the moment. I mean, we've sold a number of strikers, Edouard and Bayo being the two, who we sold permanently. We've then offloaded Lee Griffiths on loan, and quite rightly so, to Dundee. But we have left it very short up top, Laura. I've managed to continue speaking about Ajeti whilst you've been away. And I'm, as I said to the troops who are tuning in, I'm loath to really dig them out about this, but it just doesn't seem as though we have any options in which to replace him. I mean, what do we do if Ajeti needs to come off? And by the way, I don't think he needs to come off just yet. Leading up to the half-time interval, we're looking at some chances. Ajeti probably had the best chance of the match. I think Abada had a good chance at the back post where it's ended up in the side net. Abada has hit the bar. Jota with a long-range effort. So we've had 3 or 4 chances. Turnbull, again, from distance, went into the side net. I think there is a kind of train of thought, Laura, where we've been turning the screw, and if you continue without panic, we will eventually get that opener. Another slight concern is at the back, a couple of balls across the face of goal. If the player's thrown himself at it, he's got an open goal. So there is always that risk. I want to speak about some of the other new stats, if you like, before we get into the second half. And Carter Vickers has seemed fairly confident at the back. Starfelt, I think, has looked pretty comfortable on the ball. It seems as though he's quite comfortable playing in that position at this moment in time. I think if you look at Juranovic on the right-hand side, he also looks very comfortable in the inverted right-back role. What have you made of the other new faces coming into the Celtic side, Laura?
Yeah, I think Carter Vickers and Starfelt, like I said, have not had a huge amount to do, but Starfelt in particular is an example of not to judge every player by the same standards. Just because Abada and just because Kyogo can come in and hit the ground running doesn't mean that that's going to be the case for every single different player that comes in. That doesn't mean that you necessarily just chuck them out or put them on the scrap heap straight away. There's certainly players who can take a while to settle in and then come good. We only need to look at the debut of a certain Henrik Larsson to see how wrong you can be about a player early on in their Celtic career. I think Carter Vickers is going to come up against a lot harder standard of players, a lot more difficult and more pressurised situations, but you can only play what's in front of you. And I think for him, for Jota, for Starfelt, for Abada, they could be doing a little bit more, but I don't think they've been doing anything particularly wrong so far.
William Pearson reckons that Ajeti has had his chance and and has blown it. So we will see in the second half. The players are coming back onto the park. That's Celtic just entering the building now. And we'll see very quickly if there's been any changes. I don't think there has been, looking at the players coming in. Ajeti's still on the park, certainly. At least 3 goals in the second half, Malloy, Edward, with a player wearing the same jersey that you're sporting today, Laura. Do you reckon we will? We'll get a first goal and maybe the floodgates will open at that stage?
It kind of appears to me to be that kind of game that if we can get an early goal in the second half, then something will come of it. It's that first goal coming that concerns me, because as we've said before, if Ajeti's not going to provide it, I don't know who off the bench is going to do that. So but yeah, I think if we can score within the first 10 minutes of the second half, then it'll be game over.
Right, let's go back to the action. We will be back at full time. Thanks everybody for tuning in to A Celtic State of Mind.